So we're going to jump in, and the first one that we're going to take a look at are questionnaires. This is something that's commonly used in GRC programs, and we're going to take a look at first how this is a way, and then how we could apply some automation to that. So in the screen, you can see that we've got our security analyst in the corner here, who's been tasked with doing a questionnaire, and she puts together something. She quickly puts something like in a Word doc or in an Excel file and decides to send this to the responder. Hopefully the responder gets the email and takes a look at it and decides that she needs some help answering the questions. So she sends it to a couple of her coworkers who also take a look at the questionnaire and start responding to the questions. Now, as you can see, we've got a few copies of this questionnaire that's out there, and at some point they're going to have to get the responses together, put it into one, and return it back to the security analyst to do her reviews. So if we take a look at the manual process here, we can see that preparing this questionnaire can be time-consuming for the security analyst. In this case, we ended up with multiple copies of the same questionnaire, and the time to compile all those responses can be time-consuming. While the security analyst is waiting for the responders to fill out the questionnaire, they really lack any visibility as to what's happening, how much progress is being made. When they do finally get the questionnaire back, a lot of times it's going to be invalid data and some missing data. So what can we do to help improve this? How can we use automation to help us with this? And first, we're going to get rid of those documents, and we're going to introduce a shared repository where the security analyst can put the questions into that repository and have a front end on there where everyone can access. So now we have our responders who are all going to one place, answering the questions. We have our security analyst here who can also have some visibility in there. So looking at the automation, it's going to be faster to generate these because now the analyst can put them into this repository, set up like a template, and it can automatically be generated one or more times, depending on how many people she needs to have respond to this questionnaire. There would be one copy for each of the different areas. So if you're doing a questionnaire by product, we'll say, you can have a questionnaire for each product and send those out appropriately. Compiling responses, you no one has to do that. The system will do it for you and put it into that one copy of the questionnaire. The really huge benefit for the security analyst at this point is they can see what's happening. They have visibility. They can see how much progress has been done, if people are having issues completing the questionnaire in a system. You can add some data validation, so you get better data. If you're asking for a date, you're getting a date, you're not getting some sort of notes or something that people are putting in there. And then also you can require that data be provided, and people aren't just turning it in prematurely. All the answers have to be there. So now we're going to take a look at process flows, which is another great area to add some automation and improve your workflows. And if you're one of the people that are stuck in the middle of a process flow and happen to manage lots of steps, let's say there's 100 steps in a process and you're having to check off and keep an eye on all these and keep an eye on all the status of your work items, and when something's ready to move to the next stage, you're sitting there preparing it and moving it to the next stage, can be very time consuming. So again, here's another great opportunity to use some automation. So just taking a quick look at the manual part, again, tracking can be time consuming. Preparing and moving those units of work to the next stage can be time consuming. Great example would be if you just did you just reviewed some sources of information, say it's the questionnaire. You just reviewed a questionnaire and you identified some risks and you want to move those on to an analysis stage, pulling out the risks and preparing that to be transferred to the analysis stage can be time consuming if you're doing it manually. And you could quite easily miss some steps along the way when you're doing it manually. So if we were to put some automation in place, we could have the automation handle our tracking. It can keep track of what the status of all these work items are and automatically pull and prepare units of work to move to the next stage. And of course, it's not going to miss steps. It's all predefined, so that's all consistently being performed. Reviews, very common in GRC, risk reviews, standards, violation reviews, evidence reviews, all kinds of reviews are happening. If you're doing this manually, again, very time-consuming process, reading through all these sources of information, identifying issues or changes that are needed. There can be some inconsistencies between reviewers. And then also, you might easily miss an issue because of just the amount of information you're going through. So this is another opportunity, depending on your review, could be an opportunity to add some automation. Questionnaires are a great way of adding some automation because you can set them up to be select lists and you can apply some predefined rules on there. Depending on how they answer, you can highlight areas of concern. You could easily provide examples and guidance on specific review items when it's something like a questionnaire. And then also automatically, going back to these predefined rules, you could automatically flag review items that could very likely be an issue. And so you're helping focus that reviewer's attention on areas that are of concern. Calculations are another great way of adding some automation. If you are someone who's digging through, trying to find the inputs and grabbing a calculator and calculating this, there could be some issues. It could be time consuming, for instance, locating the inputs if you're digging through various reports, trying to find the values to put into your calculations. You could end up pulling the wrong values accidentally, with human error, having invalid inputs. And then, of course, with human error, you could possibly have some incorrect calculations using the wrong formula, using the wrong information. So automation helps us in this area. You can, if you've got it in some sort of repository that you can easily pull from, whether it's a database or some other place where you're storing your inputs, you could set it up to automatically retrieve that data. And of course, you could have some validations on there to make sure, if you're expecting a number, it's a number. If you're expecting a value between certain range, that it's in that range. So definitely the data validation gives you cleaner data to work with for your calculations. And then also very consistent because you can enter in the formula. You're not just manually pulling out your calculator and doing this. Reports, also very common in GRC, and those that have to manually create these, you know that they can be very time consuming. If you're doing, let's say, a risk assessment and now you're creating the final summary report and having to dig through, were there any risks identified or any other information, summarizing that all can take time. Then you're going to have other areas that will reach out to you wanting these reports. And so having to go and then locate them and send them out, another step that could be reduced with some automation and can be consuming when you're doing it manually. You could also accidentally put some wrong information in the report if you're doing it manually, And if it's an older report, say your report's getting to be a year old, there could be some outdated data in there as well. So reports are another great way if you have your data stored, hopefully in a central place, like a database. There's opportunity to automatically generate your report. So if you've got all your data there, you can put a reporting tool on top of that and automatically generate this data or generate the reports. Now, reports, you could set up a job to automatically kick off. So it could be scheduled. You could also create these to be on demand. So you could use automation to not only schedule it, but also send it or email it to somebody. And then also you could provide a self-service feature so that you're not in the middle of other areas that need reports. They could just go and get them any time of day. They don't have to send you an email and wait for you to respond. And of course, you can, again, add some data validation here so you have good data in your reports. And if there's some changes that happen throughout the year, you can automatically do those updates. Some of the reports that I've set up, it actually generates it right there at that time. We don't actually create the PDFs and store them and such. So it's always up to date whenever we need that report. Service level agreements. You may have these as well in your GRC program. How quickly are you going to do your treatments? How quickly are you going to complete the assessments? So whatever service level agreements you have could also be a good opportunity for automation. If you're doing this manually, keeping track of all the different SLAs that you manage, that can be pretty time consuming, depending on the number of SLAs and the number of things that you're tracking. Also detecting and processing when you need to escalate an SLA. So if somebody misses a date, we'll say, detecting that date was missed and then processing it. Perhaps it's an email and trying to figure out what goes in the email or who the email goes to, takes time. And then, simply you could miss them. So perhaps you just overlooked some SLAs, and that could happen in the manual. So automation with this, we can set up our system to automatically track the SLAs for us. It can automatically detect and even in some cases process that SLA escalation, especially if it's something like an email or some other processes that you have that can programmatically be done. We can certainly do that with automation. And then they're consistently performed. So the system's going to be looking for them all the time, and it's not going to accidentally miss them if it's set up appropriately. And then the final piece, notifications. Notifications, there's lots of them in GRC, and it can consume your time trying to figure out all the notifications that need to go out. Yeah, definitely tracking the notifications. So let's say you assign a risk owner, or you, missed the SLA or whatever. There's all sorts of notifications that need to go out. And when you're doing these manually, even preparing them or sending them or tracking them, this all takes time to do. And of course, you might miss a notification, one that needed to be out, or maybe later you realize, oh shoot, I missed that, and you send it out, but it's late. So great opportunity for automation. The automation could automatically track the notifications that need to go out. These could be scheduled, they could be on demand, like triggered from an event. So perhaps when I assign a risk owner, it automatically generates that email and you don't have to think about it. It just automatically goes. Or they could be scheduled like it runs daily and you send out reminder notifications, we'll say. So the system could, prepare them, send them. You don't even have to do anything with it. and it's always consistent and timely. So it's, as long as your jobs are running, it's kind of remember to send them out. So definitely a great time saver and allows the analyst to focus on their job and not have to focus so much on the administrative side of things. And with that, we have time for questions. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. But any questions? So thank you for joining, and reach out to me if you think of anything later. Thanks, and bye.